Warning, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of either the host or guest. Nothing is a one-size-fits-all. Always read and follow your local hunting and fishing guidelines. May contain coarse language. Welcome back, everybody, to the Game Trail Outdoor Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Tykrop, and today we got a pretty special one here. I got to sit down with my buddy Brandon from Bear Track Outfitters. As we're getting up closer towards the fall baiting season, I wanted to sit down with him and talk a little bit about bear baiting and just some of the nuances and tactics that they employ over there. Brandon is one of the most passionate bear hunters I've ever had the privilege of sitting down and talking to, and it was awesome just to be able to pick his brain and see what has worked for him over the 20 plus years of bear hunting and guiding that he has done. He gave me some ideas of stuff that, I've never heard before, and some, just good reminders to keep in mind as we're coming into the fall season, which is, coming up real quick. We only got a few weeks here, and then we'll be, freshening up bait sites and getting ready to hunt our fall bears. So I hope you enjoy this content. Like I said, Brandon is an absolute passionate bear hunter. He's down to earth and just a great guy to talk to. So I hope you enjoy this, and without further ado, we'll get straight to the podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Hey Brandon, how's it going?
Not too bad, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Actually, I'm outside trying to, I guess it's starting to feel like fall, so trying to get some of the last of the sunshine in, and before it's, go ahead.
Yeah, this summer seems to flown by too quick.
Yeah, I mean, you and I had recorded a podcast actually this spring here, and, being the novice that I am, that audio, I wasn't able to use it because it was actually so bad. And it feels like it was just the other day, and now all of a sudden, hey, I'm calling you again, we're doing another one, and now we're getting ready to go into the fall season.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
You blink and it's over.
Oh, yeah, you better.
During the winter months, you're like, oh, yeah, summer, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And next winter rolls around, and you realize you did none of it because you had no time.
Yeah, that's how it goes. Never ends.
Yep.
Well, man, before we get too far into this, do you mind introducing yourself to maybe the people that don't know who you are?
Yeah, sure. I'm just a simple redneck who loves being in the big woods. I own Bear Track Outfitters. We run that. Me and my wife run it. She cooks, and I do the rest. And so, yeah, that's what keeps us busy.
Awesome, man. Have you been bear hunting your whole life?
Yeah, I've been bear hunting probably, I would say, 25, 26 years. Guiding for 18 of them. So, yeah, before I could hunt myself, I'd go with my uncle or older cousin or whoever.
Yeah.
And we'd hunt, but, yeah, hunting myself probably 25, 26 years.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, growing up, we didn't get to do much bear hunting. I mean, I guess it was a thing out there, but not huge. So I'm kind of new to it all, and I love that I was able to meet you and I can pick your brain about some of the stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
How was your, we just came out of COVID, I guess, kind of was a weird last couple of years, but you had a full camp this spring for spring bear?
Yeah, we had a decent spring. It's not 100% back to normal yet.
Yeah.
But, no, it was good. We killed a lot of bears. And next, like, we're booked until 2025 now.
No way.
So, yeah, it's crazy. I'm excited. It seems like normalcy is finally starting to come upon us here.
Yeah, no kidding. Does that ever, from an outfitter side, does that ever worry you about being able to, like, booking that far ahead, like the resource itself? Like, do you continue to have bears? Like, what's your bear density like? And, like, are you worried that in that time you'll shoot off all the big ones, or how do you manage that?
Yeah, we work pretty closely with conservation. I'm not concerned. Like, they only allocate you what according to your numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter if you can sell 100 hunts. If you don't have that many bears in your area, they're not going to give you that many tags, right?
I see.
As far as allocation for bears, like, we're the largest in the province, and so our numbers reflect that. We have so many bears. not everybody that comes up to camp shoots a bear.
Yeah.
Because, either they're waiting for the miss, or they're waiting for that bear of a lifetime. Like, they've been with us for years, so now they're waiting for that monster to come out of the woodworks, which does happen, but you gotta put your time in, and you gotta be willing to eat your tag if that's what you want.
Yeah.
And so no, I'm not concerned about bear numbers. We've seen more bears this year, probably because 2 years off, but we've seen more bears this year than I've ever seen up there. I mean, it was unreal. We had a group the last week. I was guiding 4 guys, and my guys, they had their guys, and each of my 4 guys, they probably saw in a week probably 20, 25 bears each.
Wow.
It was, and they're not all shooter bears, obviously, but a lot of them were.
That's crazy.
It's and the last guy got until Thursday, right? They didn't even sit all week. So
wow.
It's something that obviously you think about, but just like anything, any management tool, right? You do it properly, and if 1 year we have, let's say I have 48 hunters in camp, and we kill 42 bears, then I might, not that I think it would make a difference, it's just, I always err on the side of caution, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, next year I'll book 30 hunters or whatever. So.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. I feel like that's kind of been the story across the board. I mean, even on the agricultural side of it, talking to different guys, they're seeing more bears this year than they've seen in a long time, and maybe that is because of the less U.S. hunters here. Who knows?
Yeah. And, we could kill, if I'm just the numbers of bears, we probably could kill 45, 50 bears a year and be fine. It's just, I'd rather be erring on the side of caution.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that makes sense, right? Because, I mean, people are paying for an experience too, right? Like, they don't, I mean, yeah. Opportunity is obviously a big part of it, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So then, now that you guys, we got the spring underway, and we're a few weeks away now from our fall season. What's your transition like from spring to fall? Like, as an outfitter, like, are you changed? Like, is there different setups for your baits? Is there, like, you're approaching it a different way now going into the fall, or are you guys getting more hunters in the fall than you do in the spring? What's the difference?
Spring is usually about 80-20, maybe 90, even 90-10 for spring to fall. Fall is always a lot. It's a lot of an easier season, I find. And when I hire new guys, I like to get them to start in the fall, because you start in the spring, we're throwing you in the deep end. You're swamped, right? So not only with the number of hunters, but just the days are long. We drop hunters off at 3:30 in the stand. Like, you're up early, you're skinning bears, have breakfast, go check cameras, go check bait, come back, look at the footage, have lunch, bring the hunters out, and then you do your checks depending on when you put them, and you pick them up at 10:30, 10:45, because it gets dark so late up there.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you're only back by 1:30 in the morning, and you do it all again, right? So
absolutely.
So spring is tough, but in the fall, you have them in the stand, 2:33. Sometimes you pick them up 8:30, depending on when, right?
Yeah.
So it's a lot. There's not as many hunters, so it's a little more easy. So I try to, when I hire guys, I try to get them to start in the fall, and just kind of, they get away in the bikini pool before they dive in. And so as far as my base, the setup stays the same. I don't change a thing. I might run. I won't run all my baits like I do in the spring, just because I don't have the hunters to justify that.
Yeah.
So I'll run baits that we probably didn't hunt that hard in the spring for whatever reason. So I'll fire those up, and I'll try to keep like a cluster together. I don't want to drive 30 miles that way and then 16 miles that way, and so I'll try to fire up some that are in the same general area, and not for the hunters that I have in the fall. And as far as bait goes, I don't really put out gummies at all in the fall like I do in the spring, because in the spring I'm trying to compete with the berries, right? And so in the fall,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just high protein, high fat stuff that's gonna give them stuff and give them put the pounds on.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit more of that in depth, but I want to back it up for a second. And something that the more I talk to people about bear hunting, the more I realize that there's a lot of people, even bear hunters that I've met, that don't know the difference between torpor, bears that go into torpor instead of hibernation. Could you explain that a little bit, maybe, for people that aren't familiar with the term or what it means?
Sure. Yeah. So torpor is what bears do. They're not true hibernators, like a squirrel or something. So basically, what that means is that during their air quotes hibernation, during the winter months, in their torpor, they will obviously, the sows will have cubs. Don't even get up. They'll leave their den or their little nest or whatever they dug for themselves to stay in. They'll get up and they'll walk around. Generally, they won't stray more than about 100 yards from where they're resting. But they'll get up, they'll move around. And so it's not a true hibernation. They're not in a coma, right? Like hibernating animal. Yeah, like a skunk, for instance. Like when they go into hibernation, they can't wake themselves up till temperatures change. Whereas a bear, depending, whether it gives birth or if it gets hungry or whatever, if it was a bad year for mass crop or whatever, then they'll wake up and go get some food. Yep, absolutely. That's interesting. Yeah, no, I funny enough, I only found that out a few years ago as well. And yeah, it surprised me. Someone was arguing with me, like, bears don't hibernate. I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about, man. I know. I learned this in 3rd grade science. Bears hibernate. No, they don't. But there's videos of biologists and stuff like that where they find a bear den in the winter, dead of winter, and then they kind of stick a camera in there, and bear turns and kind of looks at the camera.
Yeah.
They're not pumped. You can startle them, you can wake them up, you can, I don't know how energetic they'd be, probably not really, but
yeah,
they're going sleeping.
So it's not a good idea to go poke a sleeping bear in the middle of winter. You might get more than you were asking for. Yeah. If you can lucky enough to find one. Oh yeah. So yeah, you were mentioning before about your guides and going out and checking cameras in the morning or whatever before you getting the hunters out to the actual stands. What does your camera setups look like, or how do you treat that? Are you going in and checking the cameras, every week? Are you checking them every 3rd day? And also, how are you preventing cameras from being ripped off trees? I had one happen again this year, where I hung it 7 foot in a tree thinking that I was going to be all good, and I came in and either someone stole it or it was ripped down, but it was completely gone and the strap was hanging there.
Yeah, then that's probably a bear.
Yeah.
Somebody steals your camera, they'll take everything, right?
Yeah.
Generally. We don't, obviously, thankfully, we don't deal with that. There's nobody up at our camp, so I never have to deal with somebody hawking our cameras. And generally, if it's a bear at the base of the tree, you'll find your battery. But our setup, honestly, I've come to the point now where I just realize it's a cost.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a cost for me. There's things you can do, like bear boxes and stuff like that, which work. I've had those ripped off too.
Yeah.
And, they may not damage your camera, but they'll drag it away. You may never find it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as too tight or too secure in bear country. I've learned that. So bear boxes, and generally, they're a pretty lazy animal for the most part. So if you can make it just a little bit more difficult for them, chances are they're not going to want to mess with it, right?
Fair enough.
So that's essentially what a bear box does. One thing I've done on my own personal base that I've found works well, you talked about putting your camera 7 feet. You got okay pictures at 7 feet? They look good?
Yeah, they're not terrible. I have a couple different brands that I run, and I find that I have one brand that in particular that seems to do a bit better at that height. But then with having it that high, the problem that I run into is now it's such a downward slope to be close enough to get the picture decent that it's really hard to judge bears on size. I mean, you can go by width, but it's hard to tell how tall they are on the barrel, especially for a beginner like me. I find it a little bit hard to judge bears with it that high, but it does seem to work when I'm running Bushnell cameras.
Oh yeah. So what I've done is I'll run a couple, like I'll just grab barbed wire and I'll wrap it around the tree like 2 feet below my camera.
Huh.
Because if it's that high, they're not going to stand there like a person and reach up. They got to lean on them. So they're not going to want to put their paw on that tree. So I've done that. That's worked out well for me in the past.
Interesting.
Kind of wrap barbed wire around there, and then, but with up at our camp, what we do is, like my cameras are honestly maybe 3.5 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
Like a bear can walk up and look dead at it.
Yeah.
I find that works best for a number of reasons. I find I get the best pictures. Like we have a deal, we run nothing but stealth cam, and I love them. I like them.
Yeah.
But I find that works best for them. Too high, and you got to pick with these settings, and
Totally.
it doesn't really work. And like you said, it's hard to judge a bear. For someone like me who looks at thousands of bears a year, it's one thing, but you get a hunter up there and well, what am I looking at? And then you kind of show him, and then he gets in the scan, and that bear could walk in, and he's like, well, golly, now it looks totally different, right?
Yeah.
So that's one reason we do it. We get the best pictures, and I just realized that what, they're gonna mess with them. And that's just what they do.
Yeah.
But what I found works well. So last year, I had 24 cameras that were destroyed by bears.
Wow.
Which was an exceptional year. Usually it's not that high.
Yeah.
But this year I had no cameras destroyed. They can't mess with them. You go there and you show up at the base site and it's all cockeyed, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
But none of them destroyed it. And why I think that is the case is because prior to this, and it's stupid looking back now that I did this, but I would make sure that if I check my cameras, basically what I do is I go in, I open the camera, I turn it off, I swap my card, I'll close it, and I'll put it back on. So the first couple pictures every time is me and the hunter parting around at the base.
Yeah.
But I don't have any center bait on my hand. That's the big thing. Right?
Yeah.
It smells like meat. If I go, I'm putting bait in and I'm spraying my meat and I'm doing this and that, and I go touch the camera, then they will mess with it. Right? But I found if they don't do that,
yeah.
Then they don't mess with it. And like I said, I didn't have any that was destroyed this year.
Yeah, and I think going back to my story, I think that's kind of where I fucked or screwed that one over. I think that's kind of what I did because I went in there and I checked my camera. Like I did all the stuff beforehand with my camera, and then I restocked my bait site. And when I went to leave, the red light was on, like the Bushnell red light. So I was like, wow, shit, I forgot to switch the settings. So I thought, well, I'll just quickly open it and do, whatever. It's not like messing around. And I think that's probably where I went wrong. But yeah.
I would, if I'm a betting man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's awesome. No, I never heard that barbed wire thing before, but that makes a lot of sense. For me, I just get so sick of it. Like cameras cost money and I just don't have a lot of money to be spending on cameras. And I thought, well, either this year I'm not putting cameras out and I'm just going to hunt those stands, or I'm getting an electric fencer and putting that around there or something. I don't know, but that's awesome. No, I know that was from our last podcast there. You gave me we were talking a little bit about doing some bait and stuff, and I took a lot of your advice on just kind of positioning of how I was going to set up my stand and my barrel setup and stuff like that. And it's really given me some great success. I also started, because it's my first time baiting in this region of Manitoba, I wasn't totally sure what would work best kind of for my region. So I ran a whole bunch of different food in there. I filled it up with this, I had them hitting it first. And then I did everything from cat food to popcorn, to a little bit of barley, some oats. And I kind of dialed it in kind of what worked for me. And funny enough, it was actually cat food and popcorn. They love that stuff, man. And like you were saying before, you can't have anything too secure in bear country. And that thing had a metal lid on it with a 3/4 inch bolt that held that lid on. And this spring when I finished baiting, I just, I filled it for the last time and I just let it sit, right? Pulled my stuff out of there, left the barrel there because I'm on private, I can leave it there. And that came back and my barrel was destroyed. A 55-gallon metal drum destroyed. Trying to get inside, get the last of the stuff out of there, I guess, that they couldn't get and whatever all.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that kind of led me to I was like, okay, well now what am I going to do in the future to keep that from happening, prevent that from happening? And maybe there's nothing that I can do, but I'm curious, what type of barrels are you mostly running there on your bait sites? Are you doing roll around barrels, stand up barrels, and what does that, what's a basic barrel setup look like for you?
Yeah, so I use like just your typical oil drum, right? Your metal 55-gallon drum.
Yeah.
And then the lid, it sounds similar to what you're running. Metal lid, and then there's put the lid on, and you put a ring around it, and that ring's got two holes where you can screw it, right? That's kind of what we have.
Yeah.
And so I'll run those, and then I use a pickaxe, or I have a special metal bit drill, and I'll drill holes starting about a third of the way up from the bottom, maybe even a little higher. I'll start there, and I just drill holes so it looks like a salt and pepper shaker kind of thing.
Okay.
I don't drill my holes too big, and the reason I always start that high up is because it seems like common sense, but it wasn't to me at first. You fill your barrel up and it all runs out the holes at the bottom, right? So
yeah, totally.
At least you got a little bit in there, so that's why I start that high up the barrel.
That makes sense.
And then I drill a hole in the dead center of the bottom of the barrel, and I put like a big half-inch, about a foot, maybe 14-inch long eye bolt, and then I stick that through the bottom, and then I have to come through the top of the barrel, and you know me, I'm not a very tall guy, so leaning in there, and I put the washers in and put the nuts in from inside the barrel, and then through the eyelet of the of that eye bolt, we run about a 1/4-inch cable there and then to the tree.
Yeah.
So they can knock the barrel over and they can roll it right around that tree. I don't do stand-up barrels. Sometimes you'll see them strapped to a tree or screwed to a tree and then they got a big hole in the middle. I don't do that for a number of reasons. Some of them being, we get rodents in there and they can clean that out almost as quick as a bear can.
I found that out.
Yeah, and so you get that. Water gets in there, and depending on what you're using for bait, it ferments, it gets mold, and then bears aren't going to want to touch it.
Yeah. All right, so before we lose our train of thought here, we'll jump right back into it.
So yeah, what's the last thing you heard?
Okay, so we were talking about
the hole in the barrel.
Yeah, the holes in the barrel. Where were we exactly? We were talking about stand-up drum and how it can rot and get gross if there's stuff in there. Yeah,
and then bears aren't going to touch it if it rains, right?
Yeah.
And running 52 bait sites like we are, I don't, I'd be in there twice a day filling that thing up, right?
Totally.
So it's just, to me, I'm not saying it's a bad way of doing it. I'm just saying for me as an outfitter, it's not the most efficient.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so that's kind of why we do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then what kind of bait are you guys running in the barrel? Let's say it's, you're gearing up for the spring season. Kind of run me through your entire calendar year and what your baiting roughly looks like.
Yeah, so we order about 20,000 to 25,000 pounds of bait. And so I order, we have a supplier we've used for years. So I use trail mix. That's the peanuts, chocolate covered, pretzels, almonds, cashews.
Us big boys love our trail mix, man. Trail mix and Mountain Dew.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, trail mix. I might throw a bit of oats in there just as a filler, and then I get barrels of peanut butter, and I'll put a scoop of peanut butter in with that, and then I dump a couple pails in with the trail mix, or just a couple pails in each bait site. And so that's basically all I use. And then I use, we have a deal with Northwood, their products, and so we use their meat spray. Sometimes I'll use, if I'm, in the beginning of the season, the first time we go in to fire everything up, I'll use their Gold Rush product.
Yes.
And that is deadly.
Oh, man. Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, that's basically all I use. And then, so I'll use that, we start second week of May, and so that's what I'll run. And then when I notice, I'll just, as I'm going through the season, I just kind of keep my eye out. And once I notice that the berries are starting to come out, and we also order a couple thousand pounds of gummies, and then I'll start throwing that in with the bait as well, just so I can compete with the sweetness of the berries, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What's the reason for putting the peanut butter in with your trail mix? Is it just they like peanut butter, or is there more to it?
I have kind of two reasons. I mean, that has been that's it for them. Like,
Yeah.
peanut butter, no matter, that has never failed me. Neither really has trail mix, but peanut butter is top of my list. I could probably just I have done it, just a bucket of peanut butter out there and they've gone nuts. But
Interesting.
I think for two reasons. Like I said, we have the little holes in the barrel, and so when the bear's he's messing around, pushing that barrel around, it'll clump up and it almost looks like a cliff bar, right?
Okay.
So you get these balls of peanut butter mixed with whatever this the tail mix notes is picked up, and it gets big enough where it doesn't tip through the holes. So if for whatever reason we're not able to get to a bait and they clean it out, they don't always clean it out, right? Because they can still hear that, they can still smell that. So it kind of keeps them sticking around a little bit longer. If for whatever reason we can't get to the bait and resupply it. And the other reason I use it is simply it is, as far as protein and supplements for the bears, I've yet to see anything better.
Man, that's awesome. I love that. Absolutely. That's something I'm going to do this spring too, or this fall, I should say. It's definitely what I'm going to try this fall, because I love that idea. Because for a guy like me, I don't always have the opportunity to go in there. Like I want to talk to you a little bit about consistency and baiting, but sometimes life happens. I got a young family, and all of a sudden, I should have filled that up 2 days ago, and I'm 2 days later than I probably should be, and it'd be nice to have something in there. Because it seems like if it goes empty for a night, all of a sudden, you go in there the next day and you can tell that there's not as much traffic on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in that term of consistency, what are some of the things is it important, the consistency in baiting? How often should you be checking baits? I mean, of course, that's dependent on how many bears you have on it, but what does that look like for you? Consistency at the bait site and consistency baiting.
Yeah, so there's a lot of kind of look at it. Some guys will say, don't go in the bait, more than once a week or more than every 3 days. Like, don't go in too much. I don't agree with that. I have the distinct advantage of doing this for a living. And so what I've noticed is consistency develops comfort. And by that I mean that if I'm in there at 10 o'clock every morning at baiting, which is generally what it is, the bears know that. They know that at 10 o'clock I'm rolling through with my quad, and I'm going to feel that. I'm going to ring that dinner bell, and they're going to have food. They know I'm not going to show back up at 7:30 in the evening because I just got off work, or at noon, right? Yeah. So that consistency develops their comfort, and those are the two absolute most important things you want with baiting a bear: consistency and comfort. And as long as you're consistent, like there's a bait that I was in every day.
Oh yeah.
Every day, and we killed bears off there like you wouldn't believe. So it just, as long as you don't break a habit or break a rhythm, right?
Yeah.
It's developing that pattern, and it doesn't matter what the pattern is, as long as it's a consistent pattern, then you'll be all right.
Okay.
So, yeah, I try to spend time, and I know, for your average bear hunter, someone who's got a real job, not like me. They don't have that luxury, right?
Yeah.
So then I would suggest before you set your bait up, take a good look at what your schedule is, and figure out what is realistically the time you can make happen the most. Right? Don't just tell yourself, I'm gonna bait it, 10 every morning. Well, maybe you can. Yeah. So if depending on what your job is or whatever your life schedule, family, whatever it is, find the most realistic time for you and stick to that. It doesn't matter what time it is, it's just as long as you're consistent with that time, because all it takes is you to break that habit once, and you scoop that 500-pound boar, you'll never see him again. Man.
Right?
Man,
that's some good advice. That's the shame bells ringing in the back of my mind from this spring for me, for sure. That's some good advice. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I love it, man. So then when you're going in to bait the bears, so then you got your ozonics running and you're wearing chest waders and stuff, or are you just going in there, straight out of the welding shop?
No, I don't. I don't run ozonics even when I hunt.
Yeah.
Especially for bear. If I would run it, it would be for whitetail. For bear, I don't. No, I have my guide clothes, and that's what I wear.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's, I the only time I'll make an exception not wearing them is because normally if we have a couple bears in camp and we always skin them the following morning.
Yeah.
And so we'll skin them, then we'll quickly go check bait. So if I'm covered in bear blood, then I'll change. Right?
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't. I'll just wear my guide clothes that I wear every day. And as far as precautions, again, it comes down to that consistency. It's always you in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wouldn't, if I were for you or someone, runs bears in their off time. You go into your bait 8 times. I wouldn't bring my buddy in the 9th time.
Yeah.
Don't introduce a new scent like that. That's not a good thing. But as long as it's your scent, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So then, that makes sense to me. Complete sense. So then, when you're let's say you're going into the bait, and by the way, the ozonic thing's a joke because I don't buy into that. But that could be a discussion for another time. But
okay. I know what I'm saying, but I agree.
Oh, it's all bullshit. That was funny. I was watching, and I love North American Whitetail. Don't get me wrong. Like I got their magazines and stuff. Like it's a good subscription. But I was watching one of their episodes, and I should have took a shot of it. How many times ozonics? Like, dude, I swear every second shot they had a hay bale in the middle of a food plot. Which is how everyone should be hunting whitetails apparently. And and they had this thing. It was funny. It was an ozonics thing plug. But anyway.
Well, it's just like I had a conversation with a buddy just a while ago, and I just told him, I said, the amount of record book camels and whitetails that have been killed in Walmart cattle.
Yeah.
It's like
yeah.
The record book, Dustin Hoff just killed the largest.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but again, he's wearing mismatched camel, shooting a $300 crossbow.
Dude, and it couldn't have.
And you go to the Boone and Crockett record book and you look at 1970, 67, 1953, right? There's none of this ozone lockers.
No, I loved that, man. I loved when I was when the Huffbuck was killed there, Dustin Huff. That was funny, man, because he kind of put a hole into everything. The only thing he had going for him was he was running what mineral was he running there again? That he shot that thing on. That I forget what mineral site, but he was running a mineral site, and so they kind of clung to that. But I couldn't help but think, okay, well, what is it going to be out of this story? That Dustin's like, well, mismatched camo, cheap bow, I hunt this field since the last 15 years, and whatever.
And my favorite quote of that whole podcast, which I'm not a fan of that podcast anyway.
Yeah, I agree, but
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So they have their whitetail guys on there, and they're talking, well, yeah, I should get this, and I make sure I do this. And he's like, yeah, I literally did none of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Oh man, and I just hope we start seeing more and more of that stuff as it comes, down the pipe. Because I know someone that that you talked about last time, Al Blood, and you see some of these guys, or I'm trying to think, Dan Perez. There's these different guys who are that way. They kill deer out of their genes, and this and that, and it's like you don't have to have all the latest and greatest, and
I have a buddy that
Sorry,
every year.
Yeah. Sorry, you just cut out for a second, but you're back.
Okay. Yeah. No, I have a buddy who kills big deer every year, and I've seen 90% of the deer he kills, he's got a cigarette in his mouth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just play the win, back to basics.
Yeah. Well, but that doesn't sell merch, right? That doesn't sell products.
Yeah.
Right,
you're exactly right. Yeah, don't even get me started on that.
Oh man, I appreciate your view on it, and not everyone sees it our way. But yeah, I guess to get us back on track here, where I was going with that, with the baiting thing, then with the consistency. So when it comes to the actual hunting, so we were talking about actually stocking the baits, you know, keeping it consistent. You know, on the ninth day, don't bring your friend in. But what about, let's say, you know, I'm going to use myself as an example. So I'm running cat food. I'm running a Jello and Aunt Jemima syrup mixture on top of popcorn, and it's been working great for me. And so the morning I want to go in, or the evening I want to go in and hunt. That morning I pick up a can of sardines, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to really get them now. So I go crack that can at 3:30 in the afternoon. Do you think that's going to up my chances of getting a bear, or do you think he's going to smell that and come in tomorrow night being like, someone was there today, I'm going to give it an extra rest? Or let's say, I kind of know how you feel about these too, but you know, those scent wicks, or those scent candles that people burn, or whatever you want to call them. I forget what they're called. Is that going to up your chances of getting a bear because he just can't resist that smell, or are you screwing yourself up for that hunt that night and you're better off coming back tomorrow?
It's funny you say that. Bears do love sardines. That I know. It's a true story. They do love sardines.
It's almost like a secret you don't want to tell people because it works so well.
It does. It does. I'll put it to you this way. Because it's obviously there's no black and white answer to that, right?
Of course.
It's hunting. So the way I would answer that is, I think it has a higher chance of is it going to better your chances? No, I don't think it will, because they're, like you said, they're already coming. Right? So what could get better than that?
Yeah.
Because if there's also a bigger bear, well, he's in the area and he's throwing your bait anyway. He's not going to give off. I don't like Aunt Jemima. You know, I'm more of a maple syrup guy. Also, oh wait, sardine. Right?
Yeah.
So, I don't believe at all that it would improve your chances. It has a higher chance of hurting you. Because anytime you introduce a new scent to a bait bait, you run that risk.
I thought that's what you would say.
Sometimes you luck out. You know, the bears that you probably won't give a second look or reach for your bow on aren't probably going to care. But the big bears are going to be, well, that anything new, they're cautious now. Right?
Yeah, because something changed.
So something changed. Yeah, they're now that consistency is no longer there. So their comfort is now no longer there.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and so like when I bait, my consistency is not just in my time; it's what I use.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. You're not also going to change it up last minute or whatever. Introduce something new in the middle of the season or whatever. Yeah.
Like with you know, with the gummy thing, I do that every year.
Yeah.
And so I have the same bears coming every year, unless they're, you know, we get new ones coming in, and you know, cubs that are now on their own. So yeah, but they've been taken there to look based by their mom. But I'll it's not when I say introduce gummies, I put gummies in from day one, but I might throw a handful in. Yeah. Literally just a handful. And then when the berries start sprouting, well, now I put a box in. So it's not something new. It's just now
there's more of it. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So I want to do something if you're up for it. I think this would be kind of interesting. I want to run some scenarios by you, and I'm just gonna I want your honest opinion what you would do if you're in this scenario. So I'm gonna give kind of a detailed scenario, and then you tell me what you would do honestly. You know, if it's like, well, that's stupid, I would never do that. You know, this is what I would do instead. Are you up for it? You want to try it?
Sure, we can give it a shot.
All right. So my first one, and I actually reached out to a few people, and I got them to send me some questions or some scenarios that they ran into. So I'm gonna run them by you and see what you would do. Okay. So you're in the stand. You know, it's late at night. You know how bears often like to come in. It's like right before dark. You know, you still have a little bit of shooting light. You see your pins, but it's dark. It's a shooter bear. He comes in. You're watching him feed. You're like, okay, well, it's now or never. It's going to be too dark. He manages to give you a broadside shot. You draw back your bow, fling an arrow, and he jumps up onto his back legs, takes off, and you hear him crashing through the bush. You couldn't really tell how good you hit him. The shot kind of felt funny. You felt kind of rushed because you were, under high pressure. But back in your mind, like, I think it was a good shot, but I'm just not sure. You get out of your tree stand, you wait a little bit. You get out of the tree stand, you go down, you look. You don't see blood immediately. You walk around a little bit. Also, okay, well, there's a drop. Here's a drop. So you go back to your stand, and now you're like, okay, well, what the heck do I do? What are you going to do in a scenario like that?
Man, what does the blood look like? That'll be my first indicator. If I'm unsure of my shot, and he said I hit him and he popped up on his hind leg.
Yeah, let's say he was laying in front of a roll around barrel, and he kind of jumped up on his back legs and turned and ran.
Well, if he's laying down, I'm not pulling the trigger on him anyway. You never pull the trigger on a laying down bear, first of all. But in this scenario, I guess we did. So that's just that's the unique on the back leg. So I would look at the blood. If the blood looked good, I would go about 100 yards. I would keep what we do is I keep my quad running at my base. I would go 100 yards, and that would tell me a lot already. If I'm not seeing two things, if I'm not seeing good evidence that this is a shooter bear, and it's, after 100 yards there's still blood, chances are I'm coming back in the morning.
Yeah, you're not going to follow him that night yet? You'll give him a night?
I'll give him a night. And I've done that, hunters, because after 100 yards, the chance, if you haven't found your bear within 100 yards, the chance of you finding him drops dramatically after that. Yeah,
especially in the forest like we have too.
Yeah, well, not just that, like you didn't kill him.
Oh, that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's always exceptions to the rule.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I would go for sure about 100 yards, and that would, I'd gather my info. What does the blood look like? Is there a lot of blood? Does it look like he's laboring?
What kind of blood are you looking for? Does it signify that it's a good shot versus, I'm a whitetail hunter. I've seen bad blood, but what's a good blood trail look like? Is it bubbly or is it dark? Same thing with
a whitetail. Bubbly blood is always great, and then you hit the lungs.
Yeah.
Dark blood, chances are it's a hard shot. You don't want your arrow to stink, right? And you might have got shot. So I would if I'm unsure about my shot, and I'm assuming you didn't hear him moan.
No.
You didn't hear him wreck out or nothing?
No, as far as I know, no. It was just crashing away.
Yeah, chat. Again, just on this limited info I got here, I would be shocked if you found that bear.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm looking. If ever I'm questionable at a shot, I'm looking at the arrow, I'm looking at the blood, and when I go my 100 yards, what I'm looking at is not just the blood. I'm looking at, looks like he stumbled over this log.
Mm-hmm.
Well, bears aren't clumsy.
Yeah.
Right? So he
Yeah.
stumbles, that's a good sign, right? So.
Fair enough.
And at the end of 100 yards, if because I'm also looking at his tracks, you can see like the scuffs from him running, right?
Yep.
If at the end of 100 yards there's still those scuffs, I'm losing sleep that night because I guarantee I'm not finding that bear. So, right, you're just looking for stuff like that.
That makes sense. And I guess kind of right in hand with that one, here's another one that I got from my brother. I'm assuming it's going to be kind of the same as the last one you said, but when do you leave it overnight and when do you go find it? And I'm assuming kind of the same thing you were looking at, right? You're looking for those stumbling spots. What kind of blood do you have? How far has he gone? And if it doesn't look favorable in those regards, what we just talked about, you're going to leave him sit till morning and then come back out and look.
Yeah, I'm looking, and for me as a guide, it's always harder because I'm relying on the info I get from the hunter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
totally.
I didn't see it myself, and so if
Yeah.
I tell my guys, and we have so many examples of them of that this spring. I always tell my guys, take what they say with the greatest of.
Yeah.
Whatever they tell you, dial it down if you're not ready to get your house down.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm looking for same thing I said last time. You know, if it's also for some reason overnight it's still 25, 28 degrees, I might put a little more effort into finding it.
Mm-hmm.
Not to just like that I don't want to ruin that meat.
Yeah.
Just because you don't hear a moan, that doesn't mean anything. Sometimes they die and they don't moan.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I guess my answer would be essentially the same.
Yeah. Okay, so here's another one. This isn't so much a scenario. Well, I guess it is, but I'm sure this will resonate with a lot of people. It's spring, man. All you want to do is get into Bear Woods. It's opening week. You get into your stand, and you're getting absolutely molested with mosquitoes. You bring a can of off. Do you run some kind of mosquito away, those little kerosene things? Or do you just sit there and take it like a man because you're bear hunting? What are you going to do?
That's a GU.
You say what?
A thermostat.
That's what you'll run a thermostat?
Every one of my hunters does.
Okay. You're not worried about that changing up anything at the bait site?
No.
Okay.
The set is so minimal, if any.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I had one guy who went and picked him up. I mean, he didn't kill a bear that night, but he had a thermostat hanging all these years. Yeah. I tell him, either that or, wear a mosquito net over your head.
Yeah.
Beekeeper kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think myself, all my hunters make thermostats, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on. I like that. I did not expect that answer, so that's good. That makes me feel a little bit better because I'm just to take it until I can't, and then I'm just I'm pissed off the next day because I'm covered in ticks from walking in and covered in welts.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
No.
I certainly wouldn't do mosquito spray.
Yeah.
No, but.
Yeah, totally. So I'm gonna play out my scenario, and it's something that I wasn't totally sure if I did right this year, and that other people may have run into. So it's a brand new bait site. It's a brand new area. You haven't baited anywhere within 100 miles, 150 miles of where you are. So I don't know what to expect. You're going to go in, you're going to set up your bait. So you do a little bit of, look at some topo maps, you're looking at some Google Maps, you're trying to find a good spot. You find a spot that looks very promising, looks like a good spot and where you would see bears. So you're going to go in and set up, so you put boots on the ground, you go in, you find this perfect spot, you got a tree to set up in for your tree stand. What are you going to do? So you decide you're going to do it. What are you going to do to establish that site and get bears to be hitting that? To know that it's actually there. Are you going to, yeah. What are you going to do to get bears to know that that site's there? And no one's been baiting there before. It's a fresh, totally new site.
Yeah, the fact that nobody's baited there is not a huge factor for me because either bears are there or they're not, right? So, that wouldn't play any difference or any role in what I do. So what I would do is I would set up, I would set my barrel up, like you said, for stand up. I don't put a stand up right away. If it's a new site, I'll never put a stand up at the same time I set my bait up because, well, now if this bait doesn't work, I gotta take both of them down, right? So
fair enough.
Once that bait's established, then I'll throw a stand up. Just what I do. And so I'll make sure that barrel is full. I'll dump some on the ground. I'll dump some on the top of the barrel. I'll douse the trees. And so basically for me, my big thing is I want to get that thing out there.
Okay.
So I'll use cooking grease. I'll dump it all over the ground, and I'll kind of make a perimeter. Because chances are, like you said, early spring, there's no foliage on the trees, no undergrowth, no nothing.
Yeah.
Right. So then I utilize the ground, and I'll douse the ground with that. So when a bear hopefully does come in, they're walking through it, and then they take that scent in their paws, and they take it with them, and the theory is another bear will take up that scent and follow it back to my base site.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll do that, and I'll use my leaf, and I'll spray every tree within probably 20 yards, and I'll just douse it.
Okay.
And I'll spray up as high as I can, and then I'll leave it. And then I'll leave. Then I won't go in for probably 3-4 weeks. Then I won't touch it. Because chances are they're not, the first week have for sure, chances are they're not hitting it, right?
Yeah.
So really you're not leaving it for 4 weeks. It's just, then I'll go back in and I'll check, and hopefully by then there's some foliage on the trees, there's some undergrowth. And why that's important for me is because hopefully by now they've established trails, right?
Yeah.
So then once I see that, I'll still fill up the barrel if need be. Hopefully it does. I'll still put my oil on the ground, and now I'm looking at they're coming from that direction, and that direction, and then I'll take my anise, and I won't do every tree. I'll just do a couple around the barrel itself, and then I'll walk a little way down those trails, and I'll just spray the foliage on both sides. And so when they walk through, it rubs on their fur, right? And they carry it out that way as well. And so the first couple times, I'll do that every time. Probably the first 4 or 5 times, I'll do that every time. And then once I notice that, okay, they're starting to be pretty regular, then I stop.
Yeah.
I'm just wasting product. So
yeah.
Then I'll go there, I'll fill up the barrel, cover whatever I touch, cover myself, scent and anise, and then I'll leave.
Okay. Fair enough. When you had said about, man, I say fair enough a lot, eh? I gotta watch that. But anyway, I get annoyed if I listen to a podcast and someone's like, okay, that being said, or they have like these catchphrases that they say, and it's like, oh, just shut up, and then I find myself doing it too. But anyway, this is fun anyway. Who cares? But when you said the perimeter of the grease around your barrel, when you're setting up a new site, so are you doing like a perimeter? I know that you dump it right in front of, like right close to the barrel because you want them to stand in if they come in and feed. But when you set a perimeter, do you actually move away from your drum, let's say a certain amount of yardage, and do a perimeter with the used grease as well? Or are you saying a perimeter right by your bait station?
About as far out as I can get.
Okay. And just is the thought with that then, if a bear's hesitant and hangs up, 15, 20 yards from the thing, it's still going to be dragging that scent around? Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, never thought of that. That's a really good point. Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
So, yeah, I make sure when I set up my bait for the first time that I'm going to use scent and bait that I will use throughout the season.
Yeah,
okay?
Totally. That
I'm
consistency thing.
I'm not going to go into a honey boil or a honey burn and then never touch honey again.
Yeah. I often wondered if that worked. I've never used it, but I see these guys going in there and cooking honey, and then they're like, this is a surefire way. This scent is just traveling. And I'm like, well, but the scent from, my used grease or whatever is also traveling. Or if you're using, like you said, Northwoods Bear products, that stuff is potent. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll put hair in the chest, that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I've done honey burns just to say that I've done them. So I know. You just got to be careful, watch the color of your smoke. It's low and slow, right? You don't want to burn it. I'm not convinced. Yeah, do they work? I'm sure they have some.
Oh, for sure.
I certainly wouldn't say it's a sure thing.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a sure thing in hunting.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's any more of an advantage than yeast or gold rush or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I think that gives me a little bit of an idea of some of the things I did wrong, for sure. I mean, I talked to you, but like, there's so much information. I know the first time that we had talked or recorded a podcast, we went on for a couple of hours, and there was so much from that that I wanted to try. And you remember some and you forget some. And you know what? I actually didn't kill a bear this year on my bait. I got pictures of bears. I was having a real hard time. I think maybe with my camera being where it was and stuff, I had a real hard time kind of judging the size of bears that I had on my bait. And I had kind of told myself that, if this spring I don't have something, like my goal was like 350 plus. I know it's kind of a lofty goal, but I didn't want to shoot. Yeah, but I didn't want to shoot something small, Like I don't know. I just didn't want to do it. And I was watching my bait, and you know what, man? I have one bear on there that's definitely a shooter that I'm going to try and see if he'll still be there this fall here. And but something interesting that I'd never seen in my years of bear hunting, and I know they exist, but I had a sow on my bait this year with a blonde or with a cinnamon cub, like a yearling that was born this winter. And yeah, it was super cute, man. This thing's just tiny, and so I was super intrigued by it. And I go in to check my bait. I've been running it, and they were very frequent to the bait for the first while. The cub and the sow or whatever, they were the first ones on my bait before I had others showing up. And so I go into my bait, and I have no protection with me whatsoever. Granted, I can drive my car up within 100 yards of where, well, a car, like my four-wheel drive SUV. I can drive it up within 100 yards, and then I got to walk the rest. And I mean, it's thick and wet in there, right? And once I started baiting, I'm not driving in that far. And plus, we had all that rain this spring, so I was walking. So I didn't bring any really protection with me. I grabbed my bait. I'm bringing that in on my back. And I go into the bait, and there's nothing on my bait. I'm watching as close as I can, look, and nope, there's nothing on there. So go walking in. I start checking my bait. And all of a sudden, I just hear this, like, just the smallest amount of noise. I mean, it was less than a squirrel trying to eat an acorn. And I turn around and look behind me, and 35 yards is this sow with a cub. And dude, I'm not the most experienced bear hunter. I'm not. I'll never lie and say that I am. But you know what? My heart never frickin' was. I've never had a faster heart rate from a wildlife, man. So I see her, and I turn, and I drop my bags, and I look up, and all I have is a knife on me, right? I have nothing else. And I'm like, well, this is stupid. Well, she stands up on her back legs, not in a threat. Like, to me in that moment, I'm like, oh, she's going to kill me. This is it. This is where I die. You know, at least I'm dying in the woods, you know. Like, it could be worse. It could be a car accident somewhere. Like, it's literally what I'm thinking. But she stands on her back legs. Yeah, she was totally just trying to figure me out. And then she did a couple of little, like, woofs, like little woof, and dropped down her back legs, ran 40 yards, and her and her cub both up a tree. You know how they do, right? And, man, I tell you what. I got out of there and went back to the car, and I kind of gathered my bearings, and I walked back in there, and they're still up the tree. Got a little video of them and stuff, and yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a really cool experience because I'd never seen a cinnamon like that, like up close. I mean, granted, it was only, you know, smaller than my dog, but
it's one of those things, like, obviously we've encountered stuff like that too, right?
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it never wanted to happen, but now that it did, and you walked away unscathed, you're kind of glad it did.
Dude, you know what? I called my brother right away, and I told him, I said, you know what, man? I said, I don't even care if I don't kill a bear this year. I said, I had the best bear experience I could ever ask for hunting bears right then, man. I walked away unhurt, and it was like, I'll tell you what, my adrenaline was through the roof, and I'm just glad it didn't. But I guess the more where I was going with that story is I should have been prepared. So when you're going into these baits, and when you're doing this this guiding thing, and when you're hunting, I know you're an archery guy. That's your bread and butter. But are you carrying a firearm with you? Do you have as a guide, do you have a license to carry a sidearm, or what are you doing for bear protection when you're in the bush?
Yeah, so it's funny you come up story and then ask me these questions because I don't. We're not allowed to carry sidearms, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
When I'm baiting, I don't. Mind you, we drive the quad literally right up to the barrel, and now I'll have a hunter with me.
Yeah.
Not assuming it's a bear attack, not that would totally matter, but
yeah.
When I'm baiting in the morning, I never carry anything with me.
Yeah.
We've had times where we go in and bear doesn't leave or the south cubs, and we just back out and drive back to the truck with the quad. So I have the benefit of I can see the base site while I'm still on the quad, so if it's I just don't go in, right?
Yeah.
Or if they run off, I'll quickly, kind of play a little game of roulette and see how quick I can put the bail in, check the camera, and come back.
Yeah.
But when I go pick up the hunters in the evening, then I'm definitely carrying. I have 12 gauge slugs.
Yeah.
Just because I know, I hope that there have been bears at that site all evening, and I don't know if I got to go track one.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, well, I started thinking I would just, I'd either bring my dog along because it was a puppy and it wasn't very fast, or a heavy-set friend, because I figured, well, you don't have to outrun the bear, you just got to outrun your friend, right? So.
Yeah. Well, that's like that one picture I saw. It says, I survived a grizzly attack with nothing but a .22 pistol. My buddy who I shot in the knee, however, didn't fare too well.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's hilarious. Oh man, you know what? I'm gonna try to keep this one short and sweet. I love that we were able to catch up a little bit. We talked a little bit about this fall season, but you guys do a little bit more than just bear gutting there. How about you give me a quick little rundown of what's under this Bear Trek Outfitters and where all we can find you?
Yeah, so Instagram, Facebook, Bear Track Outfitters, and then beartrackoutfitters.com is our website. We do bear, that's our bread and butter. We also do waterfowl, we do whitetail, and then we do fishing trips as well. So keeps us busy.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Yeah, dude, that's exciting. I'd love to be able to talk to you a little bit more about some of the whitetail stuff that you guys do and what that looks like for you. But I think that'll be another podcast for another time. But
yeah, absolutely. We'll love to do this again. I feel, especially talking about bears, I feel like you only but nicked the surface here.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I appreciate you, man. You really, bend over backwards for me trying to get this whole podcast thing started. You've gone out of your way to make yourself available to me, and I greatly appreciate it. I don't want to just keep using you for that. So maybe we'll have to get together though, and next time if we do another one of these here, I'll like to go a little bit more into the biology of bears, the rutting and what that cub looks like and the aging kind of bears and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely.
I want to.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, for sure. Well, maybe we'll have to do a video one of these days of this. We'll have to get together and shoot an actual film of it. But
I'd love to.
yeah, well, man, I appreciate having you on. Thanks again for coming on, everybody. For all you tuning in, I appreciate the feedback that I've got from you guys reaching out, talking to you about having Brandon on. You guys have been supportive. You've been excited. You guys have given me some ideas. You even gave me some contacts, and so I just appreciate this little small group of people that we have here that are helping this thing go. And I appreciate you guys, and it's just fun for me to do these, and I'm glad that you guys can get some information out of it. And as always, if you guys have questions or have any comments, feel free to reach out to me. However, and let me know what you guys think. Thanks for tuning into this show, and we'll catch you on the next one.